But let's get into the defense, John. Dan Lanning is a defense-first coach, and that's what this team has really prided itself on. There is one main narrative. What is it?
The secondary. The secondary is you lost all 5 starters from last year's group. So between the cornerbacks and the safeties, both, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, last year it was Jabbar Muhammad and Nico Reed on the outside. You had Brandon Johnson coming in as a transfer from Duke at what Oregon calls the star. It's the nickel in the slot. And then you had experienced guys on the backside, Tysheem Johnson and Kobe Savage. All 5 of them are now gone. So just replacing everybody in that group. Even though you do have guys with experience, you got guys with a lot of talent. Just the fact that they haven't played together before. Secondary is. I talked to Dylan Thieneman about this yesterday, and he's the most experienced guy in that room right now. He's expected to be like the kind of the star of that group. From what
he's
he
the
did
number one safety
before transferring in. Exactly. He was nearly an third-team All-American a couple years ago as a true freshman. Put up just an insane season playing as a high safety for that team, and the playing way over the top and be able to cover from side to side, and then also be able to come downhill and impact the run. He's a really talented player, but he talked about just how important communication is in the secondary, especially for a safety. People talk about the middle linebacker being the quarterback of the defense, but in today's game of football where passing is so important, I really think he said it too, that the safety is the quarterback of the defense, because you're the one that's up over the top. You're seeing what everybody's doing, shifting around, calling motions out, making sure the defense is aligned correctly, because you can see everything from over the top, making sure when there's a motion that you're going to have that guy covered. Everyone's going to be able to rotate their zones correctly. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, just because he's a smart football player. You can definitely tell that from talking to him, even for just the 10 minutes that we got to yesterday. But it's going to be interesting to see how that communication plays out when it's an entirely new lineup back there on the backside.
Yeah, and Thieneman came in the spring, and we're like immediately hearing from guys like Dan.
Everybody
has just about how this guy's a demon in the film, or how they knew immediately.
He said he said yesterday he gets there at 5:30 every day.
Oh my God.
He's there putting in work.
That is the guy you want leading your defense. That's the guy you want in a position like that. And he's smart. He's a great guy to talk to. He has brothers who played the game. And I'm really excited to see what he's about here.
What do you want to get into first with this secondary? We know it's a new group, but do you want to talk about the cornerbacks first or the safeties first? Because it's going to be interesting to see both of those groups kind of come together.
I mean, we can talk about the corners a little bit. What I really did want to talk about was the size here, and that's going to be something that applies to both these groups. But Oregon hasn't, traditionally in these first few years under Dan Lanning been a team with massive size. On the outside, even at safety, and we come in and you see a guy like Sione Laulea, 6'4", 190. Like he's sitting at that point.
Yeah.
You can look at these guys.
Good size. Yeah.
A lot of these guys. Naeem Offord is 6'1". Dakota Fields is 6'2". Brandon Finney's 6'2". Dorian Brew is 6 foot. If he is 6'1", like these are guys that provide a different type of challenge. And we heard from the receivers. We heard from guys like Dickey about what it's like to go box with a press corner who's 6'4", not 5'11". And that's going to be really something interesting to look at, because they were talking about how maybe it isn't a bigger challenge so much as a different one.
Yeah, because guys like Jabbar Muhammad and Nico Reed were really good for this team last year, but then all of a sudden you get into games like the Rose Bowl, you get into games like the Ohio State game that the Ducks did win, and you're guarded players like Jeremiah Smith and just big jump ball receivers, and that's when the size really stood out from Oregon and how small those guys were. They were good cover corners, and good side to side, but once you're getting into those jump ball situations with a 6'3", 215-pound monster like Jeremiah Smith, Sione Laulea is going to be able to make those plays in a way that a guy like Jabbar Muhammad couldn't quite. You saw that last year. He had a pretty nasty pick in the Illinois game, and he said it felt good to get the jitters out there coming in late into that game. He got to play in a couple late, but you could just see the ball skills that he has and how much that size really does affect people when they're running down the sideline. So he was definitely one of my favorite players to talk to. And so it's going to be just an interesting battle at the cornerback spot. Who are some of the other guys that you're looking at there that you find interesting?
I am curious here. You touched on Jaleel Florence, so I'll let that sit a little bit. But he is coming back. When we talk about experience from guys, that's going to be really important, because he is an experienced guy, especially at Oregon. A lot of these guys are coming in; they're either freshmen or they're transfers. He's going to be a guy who understands what it's like to play at Oregon. He's a carryover player there. Iffy too is going to be interesting, because he is another player coming back from injury, but he's spent time in this system. I think that's what's going to be really important, because we talk about how this is a different secondary and you're replacing 5 starters, but it's really this, a lot of this is the same. There's not as much change as we're really advertising here.
Yeah, definitely. It's guys who are experienced and have been around, but they haven't necessarily been on the field and putting that production out on Saturday. So that's something that the receivers talked about as well. Gary Bryant said it's going to be fun to see those guys put the work in camp and then see it translate to them for them on the field on Saturdays. So a guy we haven't mentioned yet, Ferron Johnson, coming in as a transfer from Northwestern. Right now, I'd say the projected starters on the outside are probably going to be Jaleel Florence and Theron Johnson. Jaleel, if he can reclaim that job, it's obviously these are up for battle in camp, but just because we've seen him do it. We saw him do it in 2023, being a real solid corner for this team. And another guy that does bring length, like you said, at 6'1", 190, can get up into guys and press them. But Theron Johnson, a really good cover corner at Northwestern, was a productive starter for them over the last few years. And in an offense where Northwestern's offense is, or in a defense where Northwestern's offense isn't very good, the defense is on the field very much, and teams are passing on them a lot because it's Northwestern's defense. So he was facing a high volume and still graded out pretty well when you looked at his numbers and stuff. So he just with the Big Ten experience he has, he's a guy that you easily project to slot in, kind of come in like in the similar way that Jabbar Muhammad did last year, coming in from Washington to this defense and instantly finding that starting role and be able to work from there, and being a guy that guys like Sione Lualea and Ify Obadegu, younger guys who don't have that starting experience, can lean on, ask questions, and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I do want to pick your brain here, though, again, about this second safety spot, because we understand that Dylan Thieneman's going to be a starter, both because of how talented player he is and because of what he brings in that experience. But you look at these other guys, and you really have your pick of specimens, dude. Trey McNutt is the highest safety recruit in school history. He's 6'1", 180. He's a 5-star number 2 safety last year. Kingston Lopa is 6'5", 198. Peyton Woodard 6'2",
just freakish size from Kingston Lopa. He is all of 6'5". That is a big man that he can move around like that on the backside of a defense. It's pretty impressive. You saw him in that Big Ten championship. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Owen, but Kingston Lopa just gets me excited with that size because you saw what they did with him in the Big Ten championship game. It didn't always work necessarily because Tyler Warren's a really good player. He's hard to start. It's hard to stop, but they put Kingston Lopa on him because they know that his size is going to be able to at least disrupt things and create problems for Tyler Warren like that. So he's definitely a guy that excites me on that backside.
Yeah. Is that the guy that you maybe see as the initial starter there?
I don't know. The guy that I have slotted in to start right now is Aaron Flowers, just because of the production that we've seen him have in this. Like eight tackles and an interception in the spring game. It seems from what we've seen, it's been limited because Dan Lanning has locked practices down for now. So we've been limited in what we've seen, but he had a really good spring game 2 years ago, was surprisingly on the field to start that one as a true freshman. And then this year put up really good numbers. And at 6'2", 200, I think he could play really nicely next to Thieneman because Thieneman will be on that back. Thieneman talked about being able to his versatility that he showed, being able to be utilized in different roles. Last year, his freshman year, he was really a high safety. Last year, it was still mostly a free safety. But in certain games against Oregon, he was mostly playing slot as a nickel. In other games, he would play strong safety, just kind of where Purdue's defense needed him because they know he is such a talented player. I think that versatility will definitely help when you have so many new guys around you. You can kind of move from different spot to spot. But if Thieneman's on the backside and Flowers is that kind of nickel in the box, strong safety role, I think he could be really good at that because when he comes downhill, he likes to hit people and he likes to be a physical football player and likes to get dirty, make tackles. And we've seen him be productive on the ball in coverage as well. So he's the guy that I'm most excited about there, and I think could get that starting job. But I think it really is, like you said, it's open right now in that spot next to Thieneman. Trey McNutt, we don't know what he's going to be able to do as a true freshman, how much run he's going to get, but the highest rated recruit in the history of the school at that position. So just a really talented guy. And then Peyton Woodard, I don't know if we've really covered him yet, but didn't come in with that class because he had an enroll at Alabama with Nick Saban, and then when Saban retired, he hit the portal, came to Oregon late in that. But another guy who really is part of that same class with Flowers and Lopa, a 4-star recruit, very talented. Yeah, he played the most out of those guys last year, mostly on special teams, but also did get some run at safety. So I think all three of those guys are going to be in the mix there. But Aaron Flowers for me is the favorite right now.
Absolutely. I mean, and we can move down a little bit here and talk about linebackers because Bryce Betcher said he put on 10 pounds in the offseason. He said he's excited to
Devin Jackson said the same. He said he's up from 230 to 240, and he's still running over 22 miles an hour on the treadmill. So that guy's got freakish size and speed combo. Yeah.
Like, because these were already smart guys. These were already guys who really understand how to play in the system and can be a general there, even if we're looking at a guy like Dylan Thieneman as the leader. But when they put on 10 pounds, and you really have a guy like Bryce Betcher who likes to get downhill. That's what he talked to us about. It adds a different aspect to this defense. It gives you a kind of a different way to play the run, especially not even necessarily like from a scheme perspective, but from an emotional perspective. When you have a guy hitting you that's 230, 240 instead of 210, it matters.
Yeah, because we've seen the development of Dan Lanning's linebacker since he got here. He moved a guy like Jeff Bossa from a safety spot to a linebacker. His first year starting a linebacker, he was about 215. Last year, he was up more towards like the 230 range. Just putting on muscle, putting on weight over time to be able to make a thud when you are coming in, fill in the A gap, fill in the B gap, and getting downhill. But also what you've seen from Bryce Betcher was last year a lot of development in pass coverage for him, where you saw how much that athleticism that he has, that is we've seen on the baseball field, translates to the football field and be able to cover side to side. And he became it resulted in one of the Burlsworth Trophy for him as the best walk-on in the country, but just a fantastic overall linebacker season for him. And Devin Jackson, another guy who he's more of his straight line speed is really good and he can really get downhill, but that athleticism does translate into pass coverage and makes him a really interesting guy there. Jerry Mixon has also gotten a lot of attention, not as a guy who I think will be in a similar role to where Jackson was last year. Jackson wasn't the starter, but did play over 400 snaps, was rotating pretty consistently with those other guys because you just want to keep them fresh because your linebacker is going to be trying to be in the hole, making plays on every down. So Jerry Mixon has gotten some excitement from within the team about the way he's been playing, just being physical, being active, making tackles, and should rotate in there as well.
Yeah, man, it's going to be one of those spots to watch because the secondary obviously is the place that you're looking for the most change, but this is really a place where you get some similarity, and that's really important when you have a defense here there is so much change. You get a spot where not only are these guys returning, but they're guys who are talented returners.
Yeah, a couple of the guys in that secondary that we didn't cover, Jaden Kennedy and Dalen Austin will be competing for that nickel role. I think Kennedy has the edge up there just because of the experience that he has at Ole Miss. The results were a little bit inconsistent at times, but he was being asked to do a lot of different things at Ole Miss last year. He played on the outside. He played at strong safety. He played some free safety even. So I think if you find a consistent role for him in the slot, that's where he was playing for this team in the spring game and did really well there. He's a smaller, quicker guy at 5'10", about like 175, 180 pounds, but you can utilize that speed to be able to cover in a way that Brandon Johnson did for this team in the slot last year. And then Ife Obadegwu, we mentioned him a little bit, but he was a guy that you kept hearing his name over and over again, whether it was from receivers, whether it was from corners, just as a guy that, for the corners, a guy that really has stood out to them as developing a lot in his first year, even when he wasn't on the field. Because he was limited by injury, but they've already seen him kind of take his game to the next level and trying to be able to elevate. And then the receivers were saying been one of the toughest guys to match up against just because his combination of size at 6'1", but also with really good speed makes him just difficult to try to run routes against and try to play against. So he's a guy that I'm really excited about. And you kind of have those default starters in there with Jaleel Florence and Theron Johnson, but the Sione Laulea and Ife Obadegwu behind them, those are like the exciting ones because they have a lot of potential. Then even when you see the corners that were brought in this class this year, you got three guys who were ranked as some of the best corners in the country, and Dorian Brew, Brandon Finney, and Naeem Offord. So going to be really exciting to see what those guys can do as they develop through their careers at Oregon.